Hello and welcome to the SMEFocus show powered by MTDCNC. I'm Mark Weymouth from the Sensor Specialist Plus Automation. I'm your host this week to highlight aspects of UK manufacturing and in particular things of interest to SMEs. My guest today is Helen Phillips of Mustard Advisors. She helps business owners create stable, sustainable growth for their business and perhaps their exit strategy. Hi Helen, welcome to SMEFocus.
Morning, Mark. Thank you for having me. I've followed you for a while and sort of a fan of your good news posts on LinkedIn that we see every week.
Very kind of you. They've certainly been going on for a long time, and we've known each other for quite a few years now through comics and stuff. So I think we met in the real world through comics, and I should note you were actually kind enough to give me a bit of business advice as well. A few years ago on a particular point, you didn't even charge me for it, so you're definitely on my Christmas card list. So thanks for that.
I just can't help myself.
So before we talk about what you do now and Mustard Advisors, can I take you back a little bit in history, go delving into what LinkedIn says and put your perspective on things? So can you kick off by tell us a little bit about your distant history?
I suppose it all started by accident, really. I wanted to be an electrical engineer, and I thought, aircraft electronics was whizzy and glamorous, and did the usual rounds of applying for sponsorship for university, and got quite a few second interviews, but never quite made the cut. And towards the end of the summer, there's a company in Cardiff called Allied Steel and Wire that my mother made me apply to, and I really didn't want to. I thought steel industry, noisy, dirty. No, why do I want to go there? But she insisted, and it turns out that this was their first ever intake of sponsored students, and they'd never had a woman on the shop floor in any role in the history of the company. And it sounds horribly sexist now, but at the time the logic was, well, they thought, if they're going to employ a female engineer, they need to make sure it's going to work. So they tried to put me off, and they took me, whereas the boys had 2 interviews and then it was decided, I got taken into oil cellars and dirty dark holes and up close and personal to electric arc furnaces and some of the things, places they took me to, you'd never take a visitor these days, but that was kind of health and safety standards were different then. So I was up close next to the casters, stepping over hot metal, and I absolutely loved it. And the more they tried to put me off, the more I thought this is just the most exciting thing I've ever experienced. So I went there as a sponsored student and then back following my university degree. The guy that ran the business was an accountant, but he had a very firm view that the general managers of the future would be engineers with a really broad business experience. So although I started out as a shift manager in one of the manufacturing units, we were encouraged to move every 18 months to 2 years and had a huge variety of projects. My second job was starting a business from scratch in a design and build business for a steel fabrication company. Nobody in Allied Steel and Wire at the time had any experience of that. But that doesn't stop them. There's a business opportunity. How are we going to explode this? Yeah. Helen seems like a bright person. Here you are, get on with it. And so I was very lucky. I had lots of experience working with main board directors and some really good quality people. When they brought consultants in, they were some of the best consultants in the world. So I was really fortunate to have that experience. So that business I helped to set up. I joined as a project manager, and then eventually moved over to the fabrication unit as a production manager, where I was responsible for putting in BS 5750 as it was then. And again, looking at different business process re-engineering projects in various different businesses. I eventually became a project manager in IT, but nasty black boxes with wires coming out the back. And I'm sure system testing is something that's is a punishment devised for people. Yeah. So I wanted to get back into manufacturing, and I wanted to get back into manufacturing management. So I did a master's degree in manufacturing and management and started looking for a career away from IT. So because I was looking for a career move away from IT, I took a job as a business systems manager in a construction products company. as you do.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
It's interesting to hear you sort of being given that challenge of doing different projects every sort of 18 months within a large manufacturing organization. It's sort of, I look back on my history and quite a few people I knew at similar times in Lucas and similar companies who all followed that similar role. I think we were very lucky to see so much of the world doing different challenges.
Yeah.
I also heard your comment about aerospace. I started out as an aerospace electronic engineer. That's all I ever wanted to do in my life. And thanks to going on a graduate scheme, I quickly decided I didn't want to, and I changed within a few months. So you didn't miss anything, according to me, anyway.
Well, I went into one place. I can't remember which one it was now, and it was like a big shed and lots of people in little cubicles with oscilloscopes and soldering irons. And I thought, this isn't very exciting. This isn't what I signed up for. So yeah, I made some good friends who got those jobs that I missed out on, and I don't think I missed out. I had a really good time in the steel industry. Really enjoyed it.
It sounds exciting. And was that so have we now got up to the point where you moved across to Eurobond doors?
Yes. Well, it was Eurobond laminates and Eurobond doors. Yeah.
So I know you were there for 16 years. So tell us something about those 16 years, the kind of things you did, and what observations and opinions did you form?
So, as I say, I went in there as business systems manager. The first thing that I went in was they needed an IP infrastructure. They had 2 PCs and a kind of VAX system in those days. So no antivirus, no file servers, no backups. Very rudimentary networks of some basic stuff. It was a huge cultural change going from a large corporation where you had to write a sort of 10-page business case to spend over £1,000 to an organization that was effectively owner managed, and you go in the office and said, well, this is what you need, and then the guy says, well, how much is that going to cost? And I said £10,000. Okay then. What do you mean? Okay then. Well, go on, go ahead. Well, what paperwork do I have to do? What business case do you need? And so that was kind of it was quite scary in some respects, but on the other hand, it was there's a great deal of freedom. You could make decisions fairly quickly, which is the nice thing about working with owner managed businesses. The downside is if it doesn't feel right, it's quite difficult to get them to come around to your way of thinking. So that can be a problem. So in some respects, it was quite similar to the business that I set up for ASW in that it was what we call specifier-led products. So your sales process is that you're influencing architects and product designers and people like that, but your customers are actually contractors on building sites. So in that sense, I had something to bring to the party because I understood those mechanisms, which is perhaps different from an organisation that's just marketing to and selling to their normal customers. The systems that they had were bespoke systems because the business was high variety, low volume, which hadn't been well served by packaged software. But the pace of development was glacial, and there's this whole thing about the software company were giving them what they asked for, but what they asked for wasn't what they really needed. And there's this kind of, I almost acted for my first 2 years as a kind of translator, translating from what the manufacturing people wanted to what the business systems people would understand. And I figured out that whilst there wasn't going to be a package off the shelf that would meet their needs, that it would get us a whole lot closer in a lot less time and less money than what they were doing at the moment. And so we eventually found a solution in Epicor MRP, which at the time had well, still does, has a very good product configurator, which allowed us, the products we were making, there was literally an infinite variety of widths and thicknesses and colors and so a conventional system which is set up where you define what your product is just never would have worked for us, and this product configurator allowed us to do that. And the system worked. It served them very well, and I don't know what they're using just at the moment, but certainly a couple of years ago they were still using it, so I must have done something right. And there's one thing about implementing an MRP system is you get to learn an awful lot about a manufacturing business and how it works. You know, you really get inside the nooks and crannies. And we'd inherited a costing model and a set of KPIs from the parent company that was a cladding manufacturer. So that wasn't serving us terribly well. You know, it was looking at focusing on margins rather than profitability. So what we did there was we said, well, actually, no, what we need to do is to put KPIs in and measures that drive profitability and customer service rather than margin, which transformed the business. And yeah, my role changed to more of a troubleshooter then. So, you know, again, like I'd been doing at ASW, was going into a business a department for 18 months to 2 years, looking at the processes, trying to improve them, and then training somebody to pick it up and run it when I moved on.
And did that hold true for your time? Because I know you're in a variety of roles with quality systems, operations, and then obviously finally as operations director. So over what sort of period of time were you doing that troubleshooting? And is that where as you moved through the organisation up to operations director?
Yeah, so some of the projects were kind of 18 months projects, and the quality systems manager was a slightly longer role because we re-implemented our ISO 9001, put in environmental systems. I'm a great believer that quality systems have to work for the business, not the other way around. And, you know, so many times people put processes in because they think they have to for ISO 9001. And you know, these things are based on good practice. So why wouldn't you? But also you just need to make it work for you and focus on the things that add value from your customer's point of view and reducing waste. So the role as operations director came about because it's a sort of classic problem that you get in manufacturing businesses where, I mean, the way it was described was that the company wasn't meeting their delivery dates on time in full. Performance was really poor. And then, you know, sales were blaming production and production were blaming sales. And the root cause of the problem was they didn't have a repeatable process for estimating delivery dates. And so, you know, the first thing was to try and put a process in. And the thing that, you know, the thing that you learn about this is that if you give people ownership, then first of all, you get a more accurate estimate of time because they're using their time and experience to do it. But also, if they've actually come up with that estimate, they feel some sort of responsibility to meeting it. And so by putting a process in and improving communication between sales and manufacturing and, you know, sort of making that system work, it improved on time in full and efficiency. And if you can have a sensible lead time, you've got more time to plan, more time to prepare, which means you get better quality at the end of the day. And then I suppose the next big thing that I learned from that experience, so that was a big challenge there, was changing the culture on the shop floor. So encouraging the team leaders to, first of all, developing their skills and their confidence, and then encouraging them to take responsibility. Because, you know, as a manager, you can't micromanage people. When your back's turned, they'll try and do something else. So what you have to do is work through people, encourage them to kind of do stuff because they want to and because it's the right thing to do. And, you know, over the years, we got significant increases in productivity as a result of really, you know, changing the way information flowed, but also about changing the way people worked and focusing them on things that add value.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So I think to sort of put a timestamp on things, you finished working at Eurobond doors in 2018. A bit of Googling told me that Ed Sheeran was dominating the charts. 2018, of course, Westminster was debating whether Brexit should happen, and you joined Mustard Advisors. So can I ask what prompted this, what attracted you to Mustard, and really tell us about your journey over the past 7.5 years working with businesses and helping business owners?
Yeah, so Eurobond Laminates was restructured and Eurobond Laminates was sold off, and Doors was restructured, and I was made redundant as part of that process. And I was sort of thinking back to my time in Eurobonds, and although I'd sort of done a lot of work on lean systems thinking, I'd never actually finished a lean project. Every time I got into it, and before it finished, I got moved on, which kind of, it's, you know, exciting from a career point of view, but frustrating. So I started out as set myself out as a lean systems consultant, and it was really difficult, actually. It's a challenging marketplace locally because, you know, looking back on it now, it's obvious. You know, when I was operations director, I never used to get out much. So why on earth did I think that if I went networking, I'd meet operations directors? And also in South Wales, there is a very good company that's got very close links to the university. And so it's quite difficult as a solo person to make a lot of noise in that environment. But I came across Mustard by accident. But when I found out more about it, it just made sense. Is the thing I'd found most rewarding in my career, you know, particularly at Eurobond, was all about helping people to achieve their potential. You know, picking people who've got something, but it wasn't being channeled, and helping them to make the best of their things, give them success. And then the sort of thing that made it quite difficult for me to get another job as an operations director was the breadth of my experience. You know, I got lots and lots of experience. I've worked in every department of a manufacturing business, but only 5 years as an operations director. But that meant that I was ideally placed then to advise SME businesses, because I'd seen every department and I'd seen how a business works as a whole. And very often when business owners start their business, it's because they're really good at what they do, but there's gaps in their knowledge, things that they don't know about. And, you know, in my position, I'm able to help with that.
I can imagine. I mean, you talked within the big corporate world of understand the benefit KPIs versus margin and empowerment, which are all big company topics. But you say, I can see, you know, they're incredibly applicable to SMEs. So I can see that pass through of knowledge very clearly. So I was going to say, what nuggets of advice would you offer then? Probably far more eloquent than mine. I should have read my questions better. What nuggets of advice would you offer to SMEs? What have you seen? What do you keep telling people? What do you bang your head about? What should SMEs be doing? What are the top tips?
Absolute clarity on how they add value for their customers, I think, is the thing. You know, early stage businesses they're kind of not clear on, I do this, yes, but that's fine, but look at it from your customer's point of view, not what you do to the customer, but what the customer gets from you. And then some sort of clarity on who you can help, because you know, I have a software company one day that, you know, my software will work for everybody. Well, of course it would, but you know, for a pie shop on the corner, they don't need your software, because if they're not in touch with their daily sales figures and the analysis of what sells well on a Saturday morning, then, you know, they probably shouldn't be in business. And equally, very big businesses are very well served by other products. So being clear about who you can add the most value to, who your target customer is, because if you just take a scattergun approach to your marketplace, it's very difficult for people to identify that you're the person they want to work with. So if you're absolutely clear that this is where I do my very best work, then somebody will come up to you and say, but do you also? You don't have to say, no, I don't. You can, of course, you can say yes to the bigger projects or the smaller projects or the things that are slightly outside your zone of excellence, if you like. But if you actually focus and say, this is what I do and this is where I do my best work, you're much more likely to attract the sort of customers that you want to work with.
Okay.
So
this show goes out on a Saturday, so maybe it's a topical question based on that to ask. But I know a big part of what you do is not only helping businesses, helping owners grow their business, but also thinking about exit planning. So I'm imagining people on a Saturday morning thinking about that particularly. So can you tell us more about how you go about exit planning, what some of the topics and issues are?
Yeah, the way that Mustard works, I mean, it's actually the same process. It kind of just manifests itself differently according to what people are looking for. So I seem to be good at people in their late 20s, early 30s who want to start. They've got a business, they want to grow the business, but they don't want to sacrifice family life. And also then people in their 50s and 60s are thinking about what their end game is. And the key to all of this is having a business that will grow without you needing to be right in the middle of everything. So if you're in your 30s and growing your business and you just cannot put any more hours in without sacrificing family life, that's because too much depends on you. If you're in your 50s and you're looking to sell your business, if everything depends on you and you take you out of the equation, you've got nothing left to sell. And so it's not, there are plenty of people out there that can advise on what's the best structure, whether it's an EOT or an MBO or whatever, but this is about getting your business ready for that decision. So whether you're handing over to somebody else within your team, or whether you're going to put it for a trade sale, or whether you're going to do some sort of orderly wind down, it's about having a business that runs without you needing to be in the middle of everything. And if you do that, the business will be more profitable and it'll be better run, and you'll have more time to do the things you love to do.
Okay. Of the different results you've achieved, maybe working with customers or working in businesses, what things do you think you're most proud of? What are the highlights of your career? What do you look back on and either smile or smirk about?
I think that there's two sides. The customers, some of my customers have achieved substantial growth, sort of doubling their turnover within 12 to 18 months. Not everybody can, but when they do, it's incredibly rewarding to see that. And also you see the impact it has on people's lives. People who get to spend more time with the family, they start doing the things they really love. They fall in love with their business again. And that's probably the most rewarding thing about what I do is that helping people to fall in love with their business.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be something really good. Okay. Talking about rewarding things to do, when you browse LinkedIn, various topics and various posts catch your eye, and often the ones that are less business related catch your eye maybe a little bit more depending on how your day goes. And one that you posted a couple of weeks ago really caught my eye, which was about sailing training charity Challenge Wales. So I know you're a chair of the trustees, so can you tell us about Challenge Wales, please?
Yeah, so Challenge Wales is a sail training charity. We work with young people aged between 12 and 25, helping them with life and employability skills, helping them to achieve their potential. And we do this through taking them out to sea on a 72-foot round the world racing yacht. And from the moment that they leave the locks at Penarth, which is just outside Cardiff, they get involved in absolutely everything, from navigating to steering to hoisting the sails to making the tea and cleaning the toilets. And we work with a huge range of people, from seriously deprived kids who don't know how to boil an egg, to young people, sort of like Atlantic College, for example, where the young people there are highly motivated, very intelligent, and the conversations they have around the dinner table of a night are just kind of mind-boggling, to be honest, the sort of depth of thought. But it's life-changing. You see young people who are, maybe don't have confidence or don't have hope, and they come along and they learn these new skills, and it gives them confidence, and it helps them sort of feel like they can go out and if they can climb the mast or go out on the spinnaker pole, then finding a job's not so scary, is it? So that aspect of it's incredibly rewarding. It's a great charity.
And how long do they go out for the day sailing? Are you doing longer expeditions? How do they work? What do they do?
A lot of our voyages are one day. We're quite unusual in that respect, because a lot of the sail training charities would do longer voyages. But we find that with some of the groups that we work with, just getting to Cardiff and getting on the boat is quite a big thing. So ideally what we do is take a group of young people for a one-day experience where they sort of learn about the environment and experience sailing for the first time, and then as a result of that motivates them then to want to come back and do longer trips with us. And it's the longer trips where the magic really happens. A one day voyage in itself is transformational, but like a 4-day trip or a 7-day trip is quite something. And we operate mainly from Cardiff, but travel down to the south coast. We've got a trip to Scotland this year and a trip to the Channel Islands, so do voyage further afield.
And I take it that sailing was the thing that first got you involved in this. Have you got a passion for sailing yourself?
Yeah, so I did actually start sailing in big boats when I was in my 20s, but most of my time I've spent dinghy sailing. So although I do get out on challenge whales occasionally as a volunteer, it's a lot of my time at weekends is spent dinghy sailing with my husband.
Okay. That always makes me think of husband and wife teams, particularly in dinghies, are renowned for squabbling. So have you got a good steady relationship in the boat?
What goes on the water stays on the water.
Okay, that sounds a good tactic.
We did have one almighty row once where I was sort of arguing about, fortunately it was after we'd finished racing and we were sailing back in Penzance, and we were arguing about the best way to make the boat go fast downwind, and I just got so cross that I did a backwards somersault out of the boat into the sea, about half a mile offshore. He sort of sailed around, picked me up and said, "What did you do that for, you stupid woman?"
I grew up dinghy sailing, and I also remember the moment where I discovered this lovely couple who've been sailing for a long time and seemed the most calm, level-mannered couple you'd ever come across, TV levels of charm. And he had false front teeth because she'd stood up and punched him in the middle of a race. So hence my question. That's the image I've now got, I'm afraid, of couples dinghy racing can be very heated at times. Okay, so I'll wrap the episode up with the usual question. We're a quarter of the way through the year, which is a bit scary, or rapidly approaching a third of the way through the year. But can I ask what your plans are for the rest of 2025, or what your aims and objectives are for the next sort of 12 months?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm going through quite an interesting challenge at the moment because my husband's just retired, and obviously we want to spend lots of time sort of enjoying ourselves, but I'm not ready to give up work either at the moment. So what I've done so far is when I work with clients, I normally work with them for one face-to-face meeting a month, and then any contact in between is by a phone call or via Zoom. So I've arranged all of my face-to-face meetings to be in the same week of the month, so that the remaining 3 weeks I can work from wherever we happen to be in our camper van. So we'll put that to the test towards the end of April for the first time. And I'd still like to take on a couple of new clients, but I think it's going to be in a situation now where I'm going to just choose to work with the ones that are really I'm going to really enjoy working with, and eventually start to wind the business down over the next couple of years.
Well, I guess if you can't figure out how to optimize your business and plan ahead for an exit strategy, then something's going wrong. So we should all be encouraged that you think it's possible to do. Interesting customers to work with. So how do people go about finding you, and how do they contact you, Helen?
So I suppose the easiest thing to do is to contact me via LinkedIn, and take a look at our website, which tells you more about how we work and what we do. And that's easy to remember. It's mustardadvisors.com. and advisors with an E.
Excellent. Okie dokie. Well, thank you very much, Helen. I'm going to wrap up with the usual words and encourage people that if they'd like to get in touch with the show with a comment, a suggestion, or particularly if you'd like to appear in a future episode, please email us at inquiries@mtdcnc.com or contact myself, Stuart Whitehead, or Joe Reynolds. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. From me, Mark Weymouth, Plus Automation. Cheers. Bye.